Hello and welcome to yet another installment of Frivolous Gravitas. With me today is Jordan Roy, and I'm your host, Christopher Driver, my co-host, Jordan Roy. Today we'll be guided by Jordan frivolously, but with much gravitas, to explore some more thoughts and ideas on history, historical perspectives, and their significance of and the significance of keeping our past to help us scuttle forward. So with that, I will let Jordan take the helm and eagerly await in anticipation where he's about to take us.
Thanks. So I'm not going to take us too far into the past, actually, because a lot of what I've seen as, and what's taken by me as obvious as to the usefulness of history is kind of treated as a curiosity or a novelty by the rest of society. So, it's like that one time in 1066, or this or that trivia that is interesting in the way that any form of entertainment is interesting. It doesn't serve a purpose really beyond that, other than a conversation piece. And to look into it would often be gauche in certain social situations, because there is a time and place for everything. You don't need to be deep in every interaction just to prove to people that you're, some kind of intellectual juggernaut. Chances are, if you're doing that, you're probably not. But the usefulness history, though it does seem very frivolous in itself, so it's this eccentricity that we can engage in. We can have a few chosen elite sit around swirling brandy. This thing that we can do if we have money left over from the budget, or this or that. But it actually, so to me, though, it's a lot more than that. It serves a societal, as well as an individual purpose, which we will start to get into today. I hope we come to a good conclusion. But there are a few things that we can look at. So the first is that it serves everyone across all time periods. So it serves us by on the individual, by helping us create a better future, by looking into the past. It serves us in the present by giving us insight into our own lives, people that have lived before, been in similar situations to us, and we can learn from their mistakes or their wisdom and make ourselves better. And it serves the past as a way of honoring those that came before, and in turn, in the hope that we will be remembered and honored when we pass. If not worthy of honor, then at least remembered, which is really all that's left. So it serves a purpose just like any other aspect of society, in my opinion. So you have a doctor who mends wounds. You have, a policeman that keeps peace. These are very present centric focuses. History actually has more of a focus, I would say, in the future, as you are writing something and exploring the past to push it into the future so people can know it now and later.
And you're talking about like historical objects of reference too, not just like
so everything. So stories, just data history. So like the remnants, like you get just someone's information goes into the future, and now we know that person existed. But then if we have their stories, that's even better. If we have their artifacts, then we can understand them. You can pick it up and be like, okay,
You can attach a story to the artifact
closer.
in that sense, right?
And it's there if you want it. And the more we do it and the better we do it, I think it's a reflection of how healthy the society is. And I will, before I get into it, the specifics of what I'm talking about, I want to say that I'm not going to get very political. I know I've been shy of it before, though there are time and place like everything else, I guess. But suffice it to say that history, when political, in my opinion, is poor history. I know you postmodernists think, well, everything's historical, everything is political. Well, the person who coined that phrase was Joseph Goebbels in 1932, so, well, have fun with that.
Context helps.
Yeah, so everything's political. If we make everything political, we can problematize everything, and it's literally Goebbels' playbook. So I'm going to be staying away from that, because part of looking at history is being uncomfortable with what's going on in it. And so if I'm political, saying they shouldn't have done this, they shouldn't have done that, well, that's something you can do, but that's not where we're going to go. We're going to look at history as a practice in itself.
So today we're going to sort of explore it objectively instead of subjectively, then, I guess.
So why history itself? Like, why would we even do it? What's its use? And how do we treat it as a society as well? So we're going to be looking at a few uses, as well as a few names, mostly quotes, but that you've all heard. And we're going to dissect them a bit, but mostly we're just going to look at what it means. So the first thing is I think that we can get into is the practical. Yeah, that's a good idea. So when I say practical history, a lot of what I mean is archives, stuff that you can go in. I need to look at the records, blah, 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 blah. My landlord asked about, oh, this place is built weird. I don't know where all the wiring, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, go to the archives. They have the records of the plans for this building, your building, there. Just go in, ask them for it, tell them it's your building, and they'll help you. So you have this practical aspect of history there. So, but as well, we have practically, you have this, this record of stuff we've learned in order to not forget. And historians, this is part of their job, even though some seem to have forgotten it. I'm a storyteller. It's like, duh, we're all storytellers. But we learn things in society. We have all this progress we've done. And it's not set in stone that we will remember it. We can forget things. There's been instances in history, because we've done history, where we've seen that people have forgotten technologies, they've forgotten stories, they've forgotten where they came from. The example of this would be the people of Tasmania, who got cut off from mainland Australia, and they forgot certain technologies, and they had stories of this and that. But they didn't know they were from Australia, generations and generations and generations later. But the Aborigines and the Tasmanians ended up having widely different technologies and cultures because they were cut off. And so we can forget things. Now, an archive keeps them, but then if no one has access to the archive, then it's just, a hidden vault. We need Indiana Jones at that point to go in and, rescue it or something. I don't know. So
steal it, you mean?
Sorry?
Steal it, you mean? You need Indiana Jones to go in there and steal it?
Yeah, well, steal it from oblivion, at least. If no one's hoarding it, then there's no point to if no one's reading information, then there's no point to the information, really. If it's waiting to be read, then that's a different thing. It's just, oh, I'm sitting here in the library just waiting for someone to pick me up. That's better than, oh, I'm sitting here in the library, a locked library, and no one's ever going to come in. No point to that. Unless you look at metaphysical things like, a pharaoh's tomb who's entombed so that, in some later time or some later dimension, their soul will be taken with their dog and their wife and their eunuchs to the afterlife or something. But that is, that's a metaphysical mechanism. We're not really looking at that. So, it preserves that which we've built and learned, so that we don't have to learn it again, which is, imagine having to do, the Manhattan Project again, or relearn, antibiotics, or it'd be terrible if we needed another Newton. These are things that we don't want to have to spend hundreds of years figuring out again.
Yeah.
If we lost the technology to the transistor, I couldn't even imagine. So these things that we take for granted, are kept in our heads, in our minds by experts. But if these experts die, we require memory institutions, which are essentially backups to society. And they serve different purposes. We talked about archives in our first episode, and how they, save the primary source data. And then you have libraries which are a repository of access, really. So, I need a book. Okay, here's the book. Go read it. Go off. But it's a way to disseminate this information. Then you have museums, which are collections of artifacts that they put on display for you. The museum is the collection, not the display. I'm looking at you, Human Rights Museum. You don't have a collection. You're not a museum.
Oh, I should totally pop up a picture of that during the...
Yeah, it's a gallery. So these are things that we have in our societies that it's like, it's a nice date to go to the museum, yes. But it's also a display of that collection, that part of history. And... which does become political, yes, but aside from that, these are one of the what do you call it? It's a mechanism. It's a technology that we have to pass information forward. Now, the other thing is to know what happened, because we have all this stuff. We have all these stories of the past, but how do we know what happened? So you can say, oh, Napoleon did this and that and the other, and it's just like, okay. But if we look at the truth, which is kept in the archives, what was actually happening on the day, what did all the reports from the campaign say, and you can get an actual story, a history of it, rather than just a story.
So you're talking about like building a tableau from all known things already, even if they're unrelated, to see, sort of paint a picture of the landscape around the subject.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Your audio just got way better there. I think it might have been on my end. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry about that. Could you rephrase that for a second?
What you were saying is gathering information about other things of the similar time is sort of, I was asking if that's sort of like building an environment around the subject to sort of get some better picture of it.
Yeah.
Like you could have a picture of a car, but if you put it on a road with houses around it, you just get a better idea of how cars were used in that time period.
Right. Well, history of cars is not, everyone's interested in history of like the big hot topic items right now, but like history of cars is a valuable history. History of transportation there's people that do history of, cars. And it's not a waste. It's not a waste of a field at all. And you get that, because history should be taken, and I hate this word, but holistically, because it's all such this complex mass of human activity coming at you from the past, and then you want to keep that going into the future as long as possible. Mm-hmm. So the immediate effects of that are, on our society. It's like, okay, what, now we're talking about the practical aspects of it. So you have a museum, you have archives, you have libraries, you have individual collections, you have plaques and tombs and cenotaphs and all these things which signify a link to a certain thing in the past that happened. And part of it's cultural memory, part of it you can go deeper. They, especially with something like an actual history, but then you go and you do this, and it's easy to ask from there, well, what does this serve? What purpose does this serve beyond wasting taxpayer money? It's not taxpayer money. It's being funded by a private individual. It's like, well, why didn't he spend it on the poor? It's like, okay, or why didn't he give his money away to this or that? And it's not everything has to be about that. Plus, it's a hard case to make, really, because these are people that are suffering right now, and then you want to spend money on an archaeological dig in northern Saskatchewan where there was a meeting of tribes, that you've figured out from some a research sussing out that there was this tribal meeting here, and you want to see what was going on, maybe get some clues as to the society and the culture. But then someone's like, well, people are starving in Winnipeg. It's like, no, they're freezing. But they...
Can I bite at that? Just because?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the main argument is if somebody spends money on preserving history, what they're doing is creating jobs for other people, first of all. They're productive jobs, second of all. And third, we don't know when we're digging up history what things are going to be useful in the future. So you have to do everything.
Yes.
And if you want to help the poor of the future, which are going to be innumerably more of them, because there will be more people, assuming we proliferate, you will help more people by preserving history today. Just depends on your scope and frame of view.
Yeah. So a lot of what we're doing today is playing with scope. But that's kind of the case I want to make today, is not like put more money in history, but we'll put more money in history when people start taking it seriously and it's not just a lie. Because you get this thread in history right now where it's like, let the past die, kill it if you have to. And this I find extremely, especially when I saw that movie, I was just
it's disturbing.
Yeah, it was. And this was like, people are in there like, yeah, it's like this deep sounding thing. But when you think about it for 5 seconds, it becomes this abomination of idea that I really hate to the core because it represents a kind of a willful ignorance and not only about history, but about how you see yourself, because we don't exist in just the present, which is deep, but no, we hopefully we're going to be existing in the future. And if we have kids, then those people are going to look to us as their like descendants. I have kids, I'm going to be their parents, so they're going to look to me as their parents, and to my parents as their grandparents. So they're going to be looking to the past to see who they are. And as we encounter the past, we see a couple things. Now, the first thing was a quote by Lip Hartley from the Go-Between, where he claims that the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. So this is true to some extent if you've studied history, but I do take exception to it a bit and taking it out of the context of the book. So essentially what he's saying is that the past has no, well, he's not saying it, but a lot of people use this quote specifically to say that the past has relevance only to its own context, which is one argument against history, essentially, that, why are we even doing this? Why are we even taking this class in history if the past is of no relevance to us? There are different cultural and societal contexts. They're different people. They might not even be as evolved as us, blah, 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 blah. So thus it becomes a waste of money, right? To do this. Or we can only look at our society, and we should be putting more money into, writing histories that help one political agenda or another or something like that. Why are we even looking at the ancient Madagascar people, or the people of northern Persia after Alexander or something? This is different. They're living in a foreign country. They do things differently. But the thing is that, and this kind of leads into my next point, is that you get this, they're all people there. It's a foreign country, but it's not another planet. So we're all still dealing with the same things. I want to find someone who I can share my life with. I want to have friends. I want to have, I want to take part in the economy such that I become wealthy. I want to give my descendants a brighter future than I had. Because, you have these things inside that you always have. We have these same wants and needs and desires that everyone in history had. They're just dealing with different factors. We don't really have to deal with barbarians on the hill, but the Romans did, so they needed a Roman army.
Capitol Hill, but that's different. Yeah.
I'm so torn about what happened there. I don't know. America, you're all nuts. Get together, shake each other's hands, forgive each other, and then move on. You're not doing a good job.
Barbarians, for real, though. Those people,
actual
right
barbarians.
down to the Viking helmets.
Yeah. So, and yes, don't get me wrong. These people that were attacking Rome, I don't care what the historiography says. They were, they didn't enjoy the same level of complexity that the Romans did, even though the Romans were quite brutal in their own right. Now they're all barbarians compared to what we live today, especially just if you look at sanitation. But the thing that brings up is that history is an example, and it's a thing that we can look to in the present to get a sense of the past. So, you read a story. Why does the story of Brutus connect to modern people so much? Why do people still read Caesar? Why do people still look to... why are there so many books about the Battle of Waterloo, when it's not really the biggest battle, but it's this turning point and everyone took part in it? Why are we fascinated with people like Hitler and William the Conqueror and Galileo and Socrates? Why are we enamored with all these folks? Because a lot of what they're doing, and even though they're in a weird context living in their foreign countries, they are acting in a way that we can still understand to some extent, which is why we keep telling these stories over and over and over and over again, which is a story at that point. Now it becomes history when you start doing it with regard to the truth. So what really happened? So you have a story, Julius Caesar by Shakespeare, but then you have the history written by like 4 historians, and you get a sense of it. You go see Pompeii or something, and you get a sense of the history. This is when you start understanding history and not just telling yourself a story. But history is a story. And I think I'm talking in circles here, because the point of it is that when you start engaging with history, you start like talking to your grandfather who's sitting there telling you, here's what I learned. I hope you learned some of it better than I did, because, man, I made some mistakes. And this is one of the benefits. And this is on the individual level, maybe even on the family level. It's harder for a society to do this, but this is why we do it. One person at a time can become a whole bunch of people at a time.
Sort of like applying the lessons learned from the past, because it takes longer to learn a lesson than it does to learn someone else's lesson. That kind of thing.
There's a few lessons I've learned that I was going through school, and I was untying the Gordian knot forever, for years and years and years. And then I figured it out. I finally got it out. And then, a month or two later, I read a book that just essentially says what I needed to know in a couple hours. It's like, oh, I'll get that. But now I grok that lesson and it's inside me.
Yeah, you definitely learn it better firsthand.
Right. So what happens is I get that idea. It's a foreign country. Though, if I can just tell you the answer, you're not going to learn it. But that's the thing, is that if you're already wrestling with the same thing, you've definitely understood the problem. And then you read history and it's like, and then I came to this. So you go in, you're having trouble dealing with, illness in the family. And then you just randomly pick up Marcus Aurelius and you get some, Stoic wisdom, and you're like, yeah, this is what I've been trying to say this entire time. This one part here, this Aurelius gets it. Now I get it too. It's like you're going through a similar problem, and the wisdom just kind of gets downloaded, and you learn that lesson quicker because you are in the same milieu as, say, I don't know, Aurelius dealing with his dumb son Commodus, or you get. I didn't really understand germ theory disease until I looked at the Jon Snow's cholera epidemic stuff, and I was just like, okay, now I get this. I understand what he's talking about now, and these are the lessons we can learn, and it makes us better people to interact with history. Now, this all goes for naught if you take a cynical perspective, and I warn any viewers that we have against a cynical perspective, because yes, as far as we can tell, nothing matters, but who cares? So cheers to you, buddy. That doesn't mean that nothing matters. Yeah. So this gets into my next quote from a guy who I really should have been reading before this, and I might be reading a lot of him after this. Jorge Agustin Nicolas Ruiz de Santillana y Borjas. So,
hey, well done.
Yeah. Oh, man. So George Santayana, who some of our viewers might know, he is famous for quoting a number of things. One is, only the dead have seen an end to war, which is, I'm sure that's something straight out of Warhammer or something. But the one I'm interested in here is that which he said in Reason in Common, his 1905 work, where he said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Now, this is a cliche, straight up. I'm not going to lie to you.
Now, is it a cliche because it's overused or misused, or is it a cliche just because it's so trite to begin with in its own right?
Oh man, yes, both. Because I feel like it's a cliche because it's people use it as a way to not have to talk about history. It's like, oh, people that don't know it are doomed to repeat it. It's like, and they walk away and don't learn history.
Yeah.
They think that they know. It's like, okay, cool. You found a truth. Yes, this is a truth. But it's not a simple truth. It is not simple at all, because yes, history, actually, no, history does not repeat itself. When was the last time the United States of America, fought the Nazi regime. It's like, no, that happened once and it'll never happen again.
Ojalá.
Yeah. So this goes back to, it's not that simple. People, the mistakes that we make are mistakes as individuals, giving your assent to a tyrant, not being there for your children when you should have been there. Looking at you, Marcus Aurelius, but actually he tried, but communist was beyond hope. I don't know. If you learn the lessons of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, you actually probably learn how to not be a terrible parent and aunt and uncle and
leader in general.
Yeah. So you learn which decisions were made improperly, which mistakes were made, and why. And then you too can avoid those mistakes. So you're condemned to repeat it, which is the guy who's like, no, this isn't a problem. Let's just not have to do with this. So all of a sudden the reactor's measuring, 3.7 Rankine, and you're like, no, this isn't a problem at all. And then it explodes, and well, we repeat ourselves on a massive scale.
I think that's why a common trope to that quote is used, that it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I can't remember who quoted that. But I guess the idea of a rhyme is that you're not using the same exact word, but it sounds the same. You know what I mean? So history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, sort of implies that things will be similar. And so a similar problem will keep recurring, which could have been prevented.
And I don't think the scope, I think people assume that the scope is just like, oh, there's going to be another Caesar. Who's the next Caesar? It's like, you're all idiots. But your dad beat you, not you, but like, so then you decide that that's the way that you need to treat your kid. And then that's the way they decide to treat their kid. And it's like, you guys not learning anything. This is just, it's just a dumb kid. Like, this is how I was, so I should be able to do this. And I've heard people say stuff like that.
Yeah.
Bitter boys, saying like, oh, if I get students, I'm gonna be such a jerk to them. It's like, cause like everyone's such a lame to me. It's like, dude, you're in a history class.
A logical aspect to that though, where like their instinct is to do the thing that was done to them. Not so much that they're deciding that it's okay, but just that it's so hard for them not to do it because it's been ingrained in them from so long ago.
Yeah.
Like not entirely. It's not justifying it. But what I'm saying is I think it's more than just deciding to hit their kid because they were hit. I think it's like instinct reaction. They hit it and then they justify it after the fact.
Yeah, because they never actually dealt with that, and they're
yeah, like a lot of sexual abusers go through that too. Like they were sexually abused as kids, and
yeah, I hear a lot of like the proportion of prostitution, people in prostitution who were sexually abused or beaten is like pretty near unanimous.
Or kids exposed to smoking or drug use or alcohol. Like when their parents do it, it's just, it normalizes it so much that it's harder to resist it down the road because it's just, it feels right as opposed to wrong.
Or they feel they deserve it for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. But it's complicated. Like you said, that's sort of what I was getting at. Is we're talking about like integrated complexities overlapping each other. And that's the importance of history, is to understand those complexities.
Right. So this is a small measure of it. So these are what I would call the practical aspects of knowing history. And out of these, it so that you can not make the same mistake. We maintain the knowledge that we have so we don't have to relearn it over and over and over again. I can't imagine losing some of this information. It's beyond precious. And it's just simple stuff like sanitation, stuff we've learned about sanitation in the last 200 years.
Do you think we're at risk of losing any of that?
Yeah, to some extent, not at the present time. If I think we're at risk at losing some of the latest stuff. Kind of, it's hard to say. I don't want to say like, oh, the end's coming. Grab a rifle, go into the woods. But I think out of negligence, we can lose. In a way. Okay, so what was I saying?
You had two things that you were going into.
Okay. Right. So we're talking about stuff and how we could lose it. Sorry, there's going to be a lot of chopping this episode.
No problem. You mind if I just end this recording and start a new one?
Yeah, we could do that.